Hello, and welcome to an adventure like no other. Far more than what you have known, there is something far more to be known than you can ever know. And it is all about you, the real you, your real awareness with your intuitive senses. You were never taught that the real you, your real awareness, is operating 5 bodies in cause and effect, restricting creation. You have been taught to think that you are only a one-dimensional human person, with a mind and emotions, and with a very short lifespan on this planet Earth. More than what your mind can grasp is your intuitive senses that can be opened to see beyond all your restrictions. You have always had an opening to see beyond what you have known, and this has been purposely kept from you, and this is where you have heard rumors and stories about your nightly dreams. Your so-called dreams is your opening to your intuitive senses that will allow you, the personal you, to excel beyond what you have previously known. Everyone has intuitive senses, and very few people take advantage of what is possible by recognizing something more than their mind can understand. Creation has its place for all of us, and then there is all life, which is far more than anything than what can become with creation. Everything we experience is necessary for us to survive with whatever we choose and decide our life to be. New Kevin Smith is the great witness to something more than what can be taught and learned in any school. It can be so that when anyone first listens to Kevin's intuitive side experiences, also known as real side experiences, from what their personal mind has known, Kevin's manner of expression will at first be rather different to comprehend. This is where this introduction and reading the new books and Facebook groups will help. Have fun deciding. DUANE the Great Writer and Seer.
In this real side experience, I would effectively be going back in time. In reality, time only exists as a part of the fabricated unreality that is creation. For the isness, everything a true reality, as the reference suggests, is a reality where nothing can be absent, everything must be incorporated, there can be nothing that presents as a segregation, or that of the passage of one state of affairs transitioning to alternative situations, and having the idea of a time applied by means of measuring the passage of the alteration, enabling this isness everything to be recognized, so a mechanism by which comparison to that which it is not must be made available, that being the formulation of ideas, and encapsulation through creational mechanics, the installation of these ideas as a consciousness then effecting body forms, able to decode these ideas into experiential effected simulation, affords the ability to determine that which the all is isn't, that being anything as created via the body vehicles of mind and emotion, which allows then eventual recognition of the true reality through a comparison. Anything as assimilated in comparative relation to the everything is, through the alternating of the two positions, that of the secondary personal self, as the ideas are generated, and the nowness of the real awareness, that is a part of the all is, everything reality. Through the decided construction of a consciousness, so the simulation experienced physical level-wise are as time frames, a process where an idea isn't its immediate effects, as it must be in isness reality terms, but must progress from its cause to a conclusion, much like watching a movie, where although complete, the movie decoding and presenting apparatus processes that which is being shown from start to finish. As according to consciousness, so decided is it that every action takes a certain allotted duration for completion, and yet in certain computer games, as an analogy, one can have a house instantly made manifest as desired. In other games, so materials need be gathered with certain durations required for each step, much as it is with the physical level Earth and human experience, all according to the computer-like consciousness programming. Ideas will build upon themselves, the effected simulation will alter in accordance. That which we have experienced, as it will be stored in our memory vehicles, we will construe as the past, that yet to be experienced, the ideas as yet to process to their effects on the physical, the future. But in reality, every idea and effect is present. It's just according to which of the ideas we currently are experiencing and which ideas we had previously experienced we then term as the past. These memory recorded previous experiences can then be placed in linear sequences, and where we have then the illusory passages of time, the eras of species and civilizations. Through the creational mechanics, we are resigned to our position, wherever along a time-framed linear sequence we happen to be, as the consciousness is the sum of its idea parts, and we must always be the effect of the current idea accumulation that is our consciousness idea construct. As we take on the human consciousness, we assume a certain extent of human experiential ideas that have culminated to a certain point, and we then are locked into the time-framed, continuous rollout from that point onwards. In theory, we could assume a certain idea culmination of overall humanity consciousness that has us enter the experience as being human, but at an era preceding what is considered the present, as though a computer game that has had several expansions, but we have only purchased the initial package, and our experience then will be as though of a less advanced state of affairs than all other players will be experiencing. As I said, through our choices, intent, focus, and attention, so we project into a certain species as experience. We take on the consciousness of said species, incorporating it into our own. We then are the effects, the experience of the species whose consciousness we had taken on, as though selecting a certain game among the multitudes available, locked into the time frames that is the evolution of the species effects. Though from the real side, as we step into the nowness of the real awareness, a real awareness that is a part of the isness everything that animates through all consciousness of ideas, of all eras of species civilizations, so we are able to effectively enter any idea affecting a moment, to access what would be considered the past, or indeed the future, as we can access ideas as yet to be processed physical level wise. And so it was that I would be travelling back in time as impressions revealed, though in reality accessing a certain idea accumulation point of human consciousness that would be construed as the past, of a set of affected circumstances different to that which features currently, as the ideas hadn't built upon themselves to the extent that they are now, and as processed through the creational body-form mechanics, as the previous set of idea-affecting circumstances would be memory body recorded as experience, where I would find myself would be considered at an earlier stage in the linear sequence that is humanity's timeline. This wouldn't, however, be in the distant past so-called, in actuality, but 50 or so years ago, by my estimation. I would be inserted into the set of human overall consciousness ideas that affected this prior so-called time era in my current human Kevin form, and indeed I would converse with a black man, and incredulous was he as I divulged that in the next century there would in actuality be a black President Obama. I would be initially in an observing capacity, though inserted into the simulation, as I said, as now I would enter a particular building, though in such a way that my presence went unnoticed, as though I were invisible to the eyes of all those within. Despite this being 50 years removed from the present, I had entered a very sophisticated complex that boasted technology that would be beyond the cutting edge of that available in the public domain of today, let alone the era I was in. That although the dark force reptilian overlords of humanity have had advanced technology since before humanity's engineered conception as a slave species, this wasn't a dark force operation concealed within a time era somewhat technology absent, at least for the slaves. This appeared to be a project that, although a clandestine, was serving a beneficial purpose. It was as though a group of humans from what would be considered the future had managed to insert themselves into the past, so-called, and secure a building by which they could construct a kind of multi-dimensional communication station. It wasn't revealed as to the reason for their operation, only that their mission was essential, as though transmissions they were able to broadcast not only dimensionally but through a time, that was for the purposes of ensuring certain galactic projects in relation to the Earth and humanity could be achieved. Impressions revealed the individuals within the complex were humans on their respective awareness processes, were backed by the guides, and facilitated had it been for their insertion into the past of humanity that they could transmit the requisite signals and frequencies, the communications that were essential, perhaps in regards to the alien armada event even, set to take place 50 years or so later, though as I said this was speculative, as I had no affirming impressions regarding the specifics. I have shared on a number of recent real-side experiences the presence of what appear on the surface to be human children, but seem to be something else entirely, and where they have an overall function and objective to operate in destructive and interfering capacities, especially as it pertains to humanity, and where previously they had been revealed as having played a part in adding to the distortion of human consciousness, in regards specifically to the distorted black magic technologies that are part of the human experience and becoming increasingly more so as moments pass by. In this case, although visually little was transpiring, there would now be an influx of a large group of these curious, human in appearance children. They just seemed to be stationary within the complex. Their presence wouldn't be realized by the humans working on the communications project, as though the children were operating other dimensionally beyond the ability of the humans to perceive. For these humans had been inserted into what was the physical level Earth past, that although awareness becoming individuals, they were resigned to the physical level simulation as afforded via their body forms. whereas I would be operating on the real side and afforded this view where I had access to that which the real awareness could additionally reveal, including that which was taking place multi-dimensionally and which was impacting the physical level. And although the children were completely stationary, as I said, their mere presence seemed to be enough to cause disruption to this essential dimensional communications effort, as though not only were these beings, seemingly as children on the surface, inclined to have a hand in the continued distortion of humanity, but also were opposed to anything that may improve humanity's circumstances, as this operation was designed to do. I would remove myself from the complex momentarily, having maintained a form that was undetectable to not only the humans that had been placed in this prior time era, but from the unearthly children also, and while outside I would encounter my current human lifetime parents and auntie. But only impressions would reveal them to be such, as appearance-wise they looked completely different to their usual forms. Impressions revealed that the operation the humans were undertaking in the complex was a delicate affair. They evidently had vast technological know-how, and as they were effectively broadcasting transmissions through time, were there error in their calculations and procedures, they could potentially impact human overall consciousness, which could result in all manner of undue affected circumstance. And this was what the interference, as exacted by the children, was intended to cause. The humans trying to stabilize their equipment from an unseen, interfering source, and this was resulting in the manifestation of time and dimensional anomalies. Anomalies that perhaps were not apparent on a global scale for other humans as yet, but for myself I seemed to be in the midst of a version of my parents and auntie that should not have been present within this human time era of 50 or so years ago. And although they differed in appearances, they seemed to recognize me, greeting me accordingly, impressions suggesting that they had a different visual perspective than the overall scene we were in, as though out of a phase from where dimensionally they actually resided. They would, however, fade from the scene. I would now adopt a completely different external form, that of a human female, and dressed in accordance with the era I was in, as impressions revealed that I was now to embark on an assignment. If my assignment was in regards to assisting the humans in the complex, or something altogether different wasn't revealed, but important was it to blend in and not be revealed as my usual Kevin form. The scene would fade at that moment before further experience relating to my assignment and what would befall the humans from the future, their operation, and with the interfering beings in child forms, could be known to my personal self. I would now be approaching what appeared to be a vast multi-layered car park, a common feature in my real side experiences, and where the representation is generally that of the multi-dimensional structure of the simulator. As I was then aside from creation, this revealed I more was operating from my real awareness-isness position, overlooking the consciousness-affected simulator, but evidently I was set to be inserted into it for an operation or assignment that required direct simulated involvement, as the sense was of my advancing on the multi-floored car park, as I said. As I entered a level of it, I would adopt a form typically assumed, especially where the defending of myself is concerned, that of a large bipedal, two-legged wolf creature, as though expecting possible confrontation or resistance of some kind, though none of which manifested, and the viewer would switch as my now inserted into another simulated scene. The situation was as follows. There appeared to be in operation a very powerful and creationally influential mafia-like organisation, and I have seen a similar before and shared my experiences regarding such on the real side, generally dark force affiliated, and that express much as any gang might, as regulating the behaviour of others through fear and intimidation, though other dimensionally, as opposed to strictly physical. In this particular, and indeed dark force orientated mafia-like organisation, the individual in command, the boss if you will, had only recently assumed this highest of positioning within its ranks, and was in fact a young, human in appearance female, of the age of 15. Interestingly, she was in actuality stepping up, becoming more aware, and her exposure to the real references that had facilitated her decision to set intent with the all-is through the personal self had been provided by an individual only apparent to her, one that would remain hidden from the eyes of all the other mafia-style dark force members, as all but her were content to remain dark force serving, operating destructively and in suppression of others. She had effectively then an invisible associate, so to say, one who was assisting her not only with her awareness process, but advising her as to her actions. For none of the gang members realized she was deviating from the general inclinations of the mafia-like dark force gang she commanded, and she had to tread and proceed with caution, for were she discovered as to her actual inclinations, she very likely at the very least would be removed from her position, potentially even executed. For imperative was it for her to remain in her position as she proceeded with her awareness process, for as I said, she headed a very influential and dimensionally far-reaching dark force mafia-like gang, and if she played her hand just so, she could be very instrumentally placed to exact tremendous impact, simulator speaking. For the greater the positioning of these dark force characters, the more they can utilize their reach and influence to effect beneficially on a massive scale if they choose to step up, and especially if they operate almost as a double agent, for with exposure so they risk losing the influence they can wield through the power of their position within the dark force hierarchical structures. The individual only apparent to her would be myself, as though I rendered myself fully visible to her alone, and whenever others of the dark force gang she managed entered the scenes we shared, I would fade and become imperceptible. As I said, I would be as though assisting her with her process of awareness, and in an advising capacity, as to how she ought best proceed to utilize the power she had beneficially, but in such a way as not realized by the vast dark force gang she led. Very likely would come a moment where she would be revealed and exposed, as ultimately she must release all idea agreements and attachments, and this would at some stage become somewhat glaringly obvious, as she would step more into the reality of her real awareness self, and less absorbed into the fabricated lifetime of ideas she had been previously and up to this moment experiencing. But for now it was a tentative step at a time, as though her contribution, Her means of stepping up and operating in a life and awareness of beneficial ways could best be currently executed from the position as head of her large dark force mafia gang. She had a particular amusement or pastime, her large organization possessing of very advanced technologies that served as entertainments, and where she had a device that would manifest on a television-like screen whatever the individual hooked up to it would create as thought forms. And between my bringing her along with her awareness process and as her advisor in regards to her dark force mafia boss actions, we would often take a few moments to play this thought manifesting game, and I would create imagery and depictions of the physical level Earth, the various human peoples, their cultures and traditions, and recreate many of my real side experiences additionally. The scene would fade, and the experience would end there.